Hello and welcome to this exciting section where we dive deep into the world of advanced architectural concepts. So, today we're going to unravel the mysteries of clean architecture and domain driven design and how it applies to your Flutter project. So, this is going to be like a podcast, so you can just turn off the screen and listen to it. We're going to go through the implementation in the next video or next to next video. So here we are going to explore its principle, how you can implement them, and look at some real world case studies to understand its impact fully. So let's get started. First, we're going to talk about the principles of clean architecture. So clean architecture is a term coined by Robert C. Martin, also known as Uncle Bob. And also he has this book on clean architecture. It's really good. So if you want in your free time, you can just read that book. It's really good. It really helps you understand how you can write clean code in a much better way. And again, that's like a big book. So yeah, it's up to your choice. You can just go through this section or read a big book on clean architecture, but yeah, it depends on you. So yeah, it's not just the clean architecture, it's not just a set of arbitrary rules, but a philosophy designed to give you project a philosophy designed to give your projects a solid foundation, making them more maintainable, scalable, and most importantly, understandable. Part 1. Independent of frameworks. The first principle we're going to discuss in this independence of framework, clean architecture is not tied to any specific technology or framework, which means you can implement it in your Flutter apps or in any other platform you work with. This principle ensures that your business rules aren't bound to the UI, database, or any external agency. The idea is to make your system more testable and adaptable to changes. Now, testable. Speaking of testability, this is a core tenet of clean architecture. It emphasizes that the business logic should be easily testable without any UI, database, or external element. In Flutter, this means you can test your business logic without worrying about the UI elements or external dependencies. Next part is independent of UI. Clean architecture dedicates that your UI can change easily without drastically changing the rest of the system. This is particularly beneficial in Flutter, where you might want to update the UI to match the latest design trends without affecting the core business logic. Next point is independent of database. Similarly, your business rules don't know anything about what kind of database, if any, might be used. This makes your system more flexible and future-proof. If you decide to switch from SQLite to Firebase or any other database, your business logic should remain untouched. It remains untouched. Now, the next point is independent of any external agency. Finally, the true essence of clean architecture is that your business rules simply don't know anything about the outside world. This makes them pure, unadulterated, and most importantly, reliable. I'm sorry for the background fireworks noise. It's New Year, so you might be hearing some of that. All right. So now let's talk about how these lofty principles translate into the real world, especially in the context of Flutter. Implementing clean architecture in Flutter. In Flutter, implementing clean architecture means dividing your project into layouts. Typically, you'd have an entity layer, a use case or interactor layer, a controller or a presenter layer, finally accumulating in the UI layer. Now, now let's talk about the entity layer. This is where your business object resides. In Flutter, these are typically plain Dart classes. They represent the pure business rules or the business entities and are the least likely to change when something external changes. The next one is use case or interactor layer. This layer contains the application specific business rules. It encapsulates and implements all of the use cases of the system. For a Flutter app, this might mean that the actions user can perform, like fetching data from a repository or submitting a new form. Now the next part is controller or the presenter layer. This layer acts as the bridge between your business logic and your UI. It takes input from the UI, processes it with the help of business rules, that is use cases, and then updates the UI accordingly. In Flutter, this could be your view models or blocks. Now the UI layer. The UI layer is where you build your widgets in Flutter. It should be as dumb as possible. Its only job is to render the UI and send user inputs to the controller or the presenter. By following to these layers and principle, you create a Flutter app that is robust, easily testable, and flexible to changes. Now let's talk about some case studies or examples, all right? So let's take a real world example to understand the impact of clean architecture. Let's imagine you're building a to-do list app in Flutter. Initially, your app is simple with just local storage, but as it grows, you decide to sync the tasks to the cloud, introduce users, accounts, and more. With clean architecture, this scaling up is just a matter of adding few new capabilities without overhauling your entire app. Your core to-do task entity remains the same, as do the use cases around it. You might finally add new cases or change the database layer, but the rest of your app remains largely unaffected. So that's more like the section of clean architecture. Now let's shift gears and talk about domain-driven design or DDD. Triple D. All right. Okay. Enough of jokes. DDD is not just an architecture, it's a way of thinking and a set of priorities aimed at accelerating software projects that deal with complex domains. Let's talk about the fundamentals of DDD. DDD focuses on the core domain logic. It's all about understanding the business domain, its complexities and nuisance, and reflecting this understanding in your code. The main goal is to create a software model that is deeply aligned with the business concepts and processes. Ubiquitous language. DDD focuses on, okay, so this is a new section, not the new section, this is the first fundamental of DDD. It's ubiquitous language. I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Ubiquitous. All right, so Paulina wrote this. Yeah, and she is really good at English, and while I am not. So yeah, thanks for writing the complex language, Paulina. Okay, so DDD emphasis on the use of a common language between developers and domain experts. This language should be used in the code, discussions, and the documentation. In the context of a Flutter app, this means your code should speak the same language as the business logic it's trying to implement. Next point, model-driven design. In DDD, the focus is on creating a robust domain model. This represents the heart of your application and should encapsulate most fundamental business rules. Next point, bounded contexts. Bounded contexts are a core concept in DDD. They define logical boundaries within which a particular model applies. In Flutter, this means having different models for different parts of the app, each with its own context and rules. In Flutter, implementing DDD means focusing on your app's domain and its business logic. Your widgets and UI elements should reflect the domain they're meant to represent, and the data flow in your app should be the data flow in your app should mirror the business processes. All right. For instance, let's say if you're building an e-commerce application, your domain includes concepts like the products, the orders, and customers. Your app structure from the database to the UI should reflect these concepts clearly and coherently. Okay. Now let's consider a practical scenario where you're going to be implementing an e-commerce app with DDD principles in Flutter. Your domain model includes products, orders, and customer support and customers. Each of these is bounded context with its own logic and rules. In your Flutter app, products might be represented by a product widget which displays product details. Orders should have an order manager class handling the business logic of the ordering process. Customers might have a customer profile widget showing customer details. Okay, let me just repeat this entire part again. The products might be represented by a product widget which displays product details. Okay. The orders could have an order manager class handling the business logic of the ordering process. Customers might have a customer profile widget showing customer details. As you build and scale your app, DDD helps you keep it organized and aligned with your business's actual workings. The changes in your business process or rules reflect directly in your code, making your app more adaptable and robust. So clean architecture and domain-driven designs are not just architectural patterns, they are philosophies that, when implemented thoughtfully, can significantly improve the quality and maintainability of your Flutter apps. As a wrap up of this part of our section, remember that the key to successful implementation is understanding and thoughtful planning. Take the time to understand your business domain, plan your architecture carefully, and you'll build Flutter apps that stand the test of time and change. Okay. How about we just, let's go through another practical application of DDD in the context of Flutter. We've already discussed the theoretical aspects and how they might look in an e-commerce app. Now let's explore another example and see how the DDD can guide the architecture and development of a more complex system. All right. So let's talk about our health and fitness app. All right. Now imagine you're tasked with creating a health and fitness app in Flutter. This app needs to handle various types of data, user profiles, workout routines, nutritional information, and more. It's a complex domain with many different aspects to consider. Now, understanding the domain, part 1. The first step to applying DDD is to understand the domain deeply. You would talk to fitness experts, nutritionists, and perhaps even end users. You'd learn about the different aspects of health and fitness, for exercise regimes to dietary needs. This information forms the basis of ubiquitous language and model. Next point, creating the model. With a good understanding of the domain, you can start creating your own model. In DDD, the model is not just your database schema, it, uh, it's a representation of the business logic and rules. For your health and fitness app, this might include classes like workout, meal plan, user profile, and more. Each of these classes encapsulate data and behavior related to its aspect of the app. Now, next point, implementing bounded contexts. As your model becomes more complex, you identify and implement bounded contexts. For example, the workout routines might be one context, while nutritional tracking might be another. Each context has its own model, services, and even its own database if necessary. In Flutter, these contexts might translate into different set of widgets and logic for different parts of the app. Next part, integrating with Flutter. On the Flutter side, you start implementing your UI and logic based on the model you have created. Your widgets should reflect the domain concepts. For example, a workout widget might display information from the workout class and interact with services that handle the business logic of scheduling and tracking workouts. Okay, that's one section done. Now let's talk about the benefits of applying DDD in Flutter. Alignments with your business objective. Your app structure and language directly reflect the business domain. This alignment helps ensure that the app meets the business's needs and can adapt to changes in those needs over time. Improved maintainability. With a clear domain model and bounded concepts, your app is easier to maintain and evolve. Changes in one part of the system are likely to have unexpected effects on other parts. Enhanced collaboration. This ubiquitous language of DDD helps to improve communication between the developers, domain experts, and even users. This collaboration leads to better understanding of the needs and a better final product. Now, let's talk about the challenges and considerations. While DDD may offer benefits, it's not without its challenges. Here are a few things you might need to keep in mind. Number one, complexity. DDD can add complexity to your project, especially in the beginning. It's essential to weigh the benefits against the complexity to decide if it's the right approach for your project. Number two, time investment. Understanding the domain, creating a detailed model, and implementing bounded contexts takes time. You need to be prepared for this upfront investment. Next point, it's the continuous effort. DDD isn't a set it and forget approach. It requires ongoing effort to maintain the model and ensure it continues to align with the domain conclusion. Domain-driven designs offer a powerful way to align your Flutter app with your business's needs and complexities. By deeply understanding the domain, creating a robust model, and implementing bounded contexts, you can build an app that's flexible, maintainable, and deeply rooted in the domain it serves. As we conclude this section on DDD, remember that the principles and practices we have discussed are not just theoretical. They are proven strategies that can help you build better, more resilient apps. Whether you're working on a simple to-do list or a complex health and fitness app, DDD can provide a solid foundation on your Flutter projects. In the next part, we'll dive deep into the final pieces of our discussion on advanced architectural concepts, including the further practical applications and examples. We'll see how the theories and strategies we have discussed can be applied in various scenarios and how they can benefit your projects in the long run.